There's a truth about aging that very few talk about, a truth so quiet that most people never stop to examine it until the silence of it starts to echo a little too loudly. It's the realization that even after 60, your heart still longs for connection. You still notice an attractive smile. You still crave that spark in a conversation that makes your soul feel awake again. And yet the world often tells those of us past 60 that love, attraction, and meeting new people is a young person's game. That once you've crossed into your golden years, you're expected to settle into routines, watch the world pass by, and only reflect on the past. But let me tell you something as a doctor who's listened to thousands of hearts speak quietly from across the examination table. That narrative is not only wrong, it's dangerous. There is no expiration date on human connection, not for touch, not for laughter, and certainly not for attraction. What's even more beautiful is that the connections we form after 60 tend to carry a depth that only time and life can season. But here's where many get stuck. Where exactly can someone over 60 go to meet new people who are not only attractive in the physical sense, but are also interesting, stimulating, curious, people with stories and smiles that make you forget what decade you're in? Surprisingly, these places are not always where you'd expect, and they're certainly not only in retirement groups or bingo halls. One unexpected place to meet attractive and fascinating people after 60 is at continuing education classes offered by local universities and colleges. Many institutions offer senior audit programs where you can attend classes for free or at a reduced cost. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that seniors who engage in lifelong learning report higher levels of life satisfaction and mental sharpness. But more than that, these classes bring together people who are curious, people who want to grow, people who, like you, still hunger for newness. And the environment naturally encourages discussion. Whether it's modern literature, philosophy, or even art history, these conversations often spill over into coffee after class. That's how connection begins, organically, quietly, and yes, sometimes attractively. Another surprising place where genuine sparks often fly is at fitness classes designed for older adults. Think of swimming sessions, low-impact aerobics, Tai Chi in the park, or even dance-based classes like Zumba Gold. Movement does something profound to the human spirit. It softens walls and lets in light. According to a study published in the Journal of Aging and Physical Activity, seniors who participate in group fitness programs are not only physically healthier, but are significantly more likely to report a strong sense of community and new friendships. There's something about working toward a common goal, even if that goal is just making it through a dance routine, that draws people together. And when sweat is involved, so is laughter. And laughter is, in many ways, the real spark of attraction. Now let me tell you a story. There was a woman in her late 60s who had lost her husband 5 years earlier. For a long time, she believed her days of being noticed were over. But one day, she signed up for a birdwatching group. Not for company, not even for birds, just to break the monotony of being alone. On her third trip out with the group, she found herself walking next to a man who had been an architect. Their conversation about migration patterns turned into a talk about architecture, then into lunch, then into a friendship, and now years later, a partnership built on shared curiosity. Nature groups like birdwatching clubs or local conservation volunteer teams are often overlooked, but they offer something that many social events do not: time. Time to talk, walk, notice each other without the rush. Time to let attraction bloom in a space where judgment is left behind. Another deeply underrated place where interesting and attractive people gather after 60 is at cultural events, but not the large anonymous ones. I'm talking about poetry readings at local libraries, community theater productions, local art gallery openings. These places are quiet, intimate, and often full of people who are there not just to be entertained, but to be moved, to feel something. And that, my friend, is the perfect soil for connection. A 2022 study in the Journal of Arts and Aging noted that seniors who regularly attend small cultural events report significantly higher levels of emotional well-being and interpersonal engagement. That means more conversations, more shared laughs, and yes, more chances for connection that lingers in the mind long after the event ends. You may be surprised to hear this next one, but farmers markets, yes, the ones with fresh tomatoes and jars of honey, are brimming with opportunity, especially in the early morning hours. These are not just shopping grounds. They are social circles where people stop to chat, share recipes, compliment each other's choices, and share little pieces of their lives. I once met a retired literature professor who told me he met the love of his life at a stall selling heirloom apples. They started talking about apple pie, and the next week they made one together. That was 6 years ago. They still go every Saturday, hand in hand. What matters here isn't the apples, it's the openness, the relaxed pace, the way a casual compliment or shared taste becomes an invitation to talk. Volunteer programs are another treasure chest of possibility. When you show up to give, whether it's time, energy, or simply your presence, you meet others who have chosen to give as well. And people who give have a warmth about them that's naturally attractive. Whether it's reading to children, supporting a hospital, or helping in a food pantry, you are shoulder to shoulder with people who care, and that's often where bonds form. A Harvard study on volunteering in older adults found not only improved health and lower rates of depression, but also increased likelihood of forming meaningful social ties. It makes sense. You're not trying to impress, you're just being there. That kind of authenticity is magnetic. Then there are travel groups specifically designed for mature adults. Now, I'm not talking about luxury cruises packed with hundreds of people. I mean small group adventures, hiking through Tuscany, exploring the temples of Cambodia, joining a photography expedition in Iceland. These groups attract a special kind of person, curious, adventurous, still open to wonder. And when you're out of your comfort zone, something softens inside you. You become more receptive. You share more freely. I've heard so many stories of travel companions turning into lifelong friends, and yes, sometimes into love. A study by Rhodes Scholar, a travel organization for seniors, revealed that over 40% of solo travelers over 60 report forming long-lasting personal relationships during their journeys. Sometimes new places create the perfect space for new faces to shine. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the digital world, but not in the way you might expect. I'm not talking about dating apps with endless swiping. I mean online forums based on passions, book clubs, cooking groups, virtual classes, shared learning platforms. These are full of people seeking the same thing you are, connection through common ground. I know a gentleman who joined an online Shakespeare discussion group during the pandemic. He now flies to meet a woman from that group twice a year. They laugh over sonnets. He says her voice makes him feel 20 years younger. Attraction, after all, is often born in words. And the internet, when used with care, can be a place where words lead to hearts. One last place, and it may surprise you more than all the rest. Your own neighborhood, your street, your building, your local park bench. We often overlook what's closest to us, but so many attractive and interesting people live within walking distance. Sometimes the key isn't to go further, it's to look closer. Attend the community potluck. Join the walking group. Sit on the same bench each morning and smile at those who pass. One man I met in his 70s told me he had lived next door to a woman for a decade before he asked her to join him for tea. He said he'd always assumed she wasn't interested in conversation. Turns out, she thought the same about him. Now they walk to the grocery store together every Thursday. What makes someone attractive after 60 isn't about flawless skin or a full head of hair. It's in the way someone listens, the way they laugh, the way they share their stories. That kind of beauty is not only enduring, it's magnetic. And the places where it can be found are often hiding in plain sight. The world hasn't stopped being full of potential. You haven't stopped being full of potential. The spark you felt at 25 is still alive in you. It may be softer now, but it is wiser, braver, quieter perhaps, but deeper. So if you feel the ache of wanting to connect again, know this: you are not alone, and it is not too late. In fact, in many ways, it's the perfect time. The places where attractive and interesting people are waiting to meet you aren't out of reach. They are just waiting for you to step into them. Be curious, be open, let the world surprise you, because it still can, and it still will. But what if you're shy or haven't socialized in years? What if you're shy or haven't socialized in years? What if the thought of starting again feels too heavy, too awkward, or just too far removed from the life you've been living? I want to speak to you honestly now. From the place of deep understanding I've gathered not just as a doctor, but as someone who has walked alongside many people through decades of aging, loss, silence, and rediscovery. The truth is, many people over 60 quietly carry this weight. They tell themselves they're just not social anymore, or that they wouldn't know what to say, or that they've been alone too long and the world has moved on without them. But here's what I've come to believe. Being shy or out of practice is not a life sentence. It is not a flaw. It's simply a space you've been in. And like any space, it can change. Shyness in later life is often misunderstood. It's not about weakness, it's about protection. For many, it grows after years of emotional bruises, after relationships that ended, after children grew up and moved away, after friends passed or slowly stopped calling, after life made being open feel risky. So you begin to guard your heart. You keep things simple. You build routines. You stay within the familiar. And over time, silence becomes safer than small talk. But even in that silence, the longing remains. You still notice the laughter of others. You still feel the ache of being missed. And that, right there, is proof that your social soul is not gone, just resting. Let me share something that may surprise you. A study published in the Journals of Gerontology in 2018 found that seniors who increased their social activity, even modestly, over a 6-month period saw improvements in mood, memory, and even physical health. Not because they became extroverts overnight, but because our bodies and minds are wired for connection, and when we reintroduce even small bits of social engagement, we begin to awaken something vital within us. You don't need to become the life of the party. You just need to say yes to one little moment at a time. Often, the hardest step is the first one. I remember a woman in her early 70s who came to see me for chronic fatigue. She wasn't sick in the traditional sense, but she was drained, lonely. When I gently asked her about her daily life, she told me she hadn't had a real conversation with anyone besides the grocery clerk in months. I encouraged her to attend a local knitting circle. She shook her head and said, "I wouldn't know what to say." I told her, "You don't have to say anything at first. Just show up. Let the room fill you." 3 weeks later, she returned smiling. She said she hadn't even picked up her yarn the first meeting, but someone had sat beside her, shared a memory, asked her name. The next time she spoke, and slowly her world began to grow again. What I want you to understand is that socializing isn't about performance. It's not about saying the perfect thing or dazzling anyone with your stories. It's about presence, just being there, being seen, being around people who are also trying, also healing, also human. The truth is, many others in that room or group or park feel exactly like you do. They're wondering if they belong, if they're too quiet, too old, too late, and your courage to show up becomes part of their healing too. You don't need a grand plan. You need one act of bravery. Maybe you walk to the community center and sit on a bench where other people gather. Maybe you join a book club, not to talk at first, but just to listen. Maybe you volunteer at the library to sort books, where there's enough quiet to feel safe, but just enough people to begin again. A report from the National Institute on Aging found that older adults who volunteered as little as 2 hours a week experienced increased feelings of purpose and reported more frequent positive interactions with others. 2 hours, that's not a mountain. That's a few heartbeats of courage strung together. There is another truth we must face. Sometimes shyness isn't about others. It's about the story we tell ourselves, that we are boring now, that no one would want to talk to someone our age, that we have nothing left to offer. But I want to tell you something plainly. You have lived. You have witnessed the world change through decades. You have loved, lost, struggled, succeeded, learned. You have a treasure chest of stories, even if you don't feel like opening it right away. You are interesting simply because you exist. And when you begin to believe that, something shifts. You move with more warmth. You smile more freely. You become, without trying, more open. Sometimes people say, "But I'm not good with people. I don't know how to make small talk." To that I say, Small talk is only the front door. You don't have to stay there. You can say something simple like, "That reminds me of something I saw once," or "I've always wondered about that." And suddenly, you're no longer talking small. You're sharing a piece of yourself. And when someone shares back, even something small, that's connection. That's how it begins. Quietly, naturally, honestly. If you haven't socialized in years, you may feel rusty. That's okay. No one expects you to be smooth. In fact, your honesty is part of your charm. You can say, "I'm not used to this," or "I haven't done something like this in a while." That vulnerability makes space for others to be real too. It invites gentleness. I've seen it happen time and again. The one who speaks softly often becomes the one others feel safest around. Because kindness, not volume, is what people remember. I want to leave you with this. A study out of the University of Michigan found that meaningful social connection was one of the strongest predictors of longevity and life satisfaction in adults over 65. Not money, not status, connection, the simple joy of being known and seen. That means every small act of reaching out isn't just good for your heart. It could literally add years to your life. You may be shy. You may have been quiet for a long time, but you are not alone. The door to connection is still open, and you don't have to walk through it all at once. Just put one foot near the frame, look through, see the light. You are still worthy of new friendships, of laughter, of moments that make you feel alive again. Life isn't done with you, and neither are people. Trust that, even now, especially now.